Welcome, friends. I'm very happy to see so many of you have arrived here in spite of very bad weather, which has stalled many people who are coming from out of town. And I welcome you all to this meeting today. As usual, I will be talking about the teachings of the great master, Hazur Maharaj Baba Sawan Singh. He often quoted some older mystics. One of the mystics that he used to quote was Bulle Shah. Bulle Shah was a poet and a mystic and wrote some wonderful love poetry and spiritual poetry. In one of his poems, he says, "The weather is so bad, it's raining so heavy, and if I go there, all my shawl, my blanket, my clothes will get wet. But I have to see the Master, my beloved. Should I cancel my trip, or should I go in spite of the weather?" And he says, "Doesn't matter if my clothes get wet. Doesn't matter if my blanket gets wet. I will not allow my love to be interrupted, my love for the beloved to be interrupted. I will go, and I'll get all drenched on the way." It's just a way of saying that so many things happen, circumstances happen in our life which seem to interrupt the flow of love. But if love is strong, nothing should stop it. No circumstances should come in the way of stopping the flow of love. Because when we talk of the spiritual path, especially spiritual path as taught by the great master, he said the spiritual path can be described in one word: love. Love is the spiritual path. All the rest is just made up for the sake of our minds. Our minds like work, our minds like struggle, our mind like classification, our mind likes to know what steps to take. Our mind likes all this stuff, and therefore the rest of it, that you have to meditate, you have to study books, you have to understand the path, is all made up to satisfy the mind to the point where it will leave you aside to follow the path of spirituality, which is the path of love. So love is the real answer, no matter what the question is. Love is the answer to all our prayers for spirituality. If we do not know what love is, if we do not experience love, we have not experienced spirituality. There are people who have spent their whole life in meditation, and it is called the meditation of stubbornness. Sometimes the older yogis referred to it as Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga means to not give up, just to be stubborn and meditate. They meditated all their lives and got nothing, because it was only a struggle with their minds, struggle with their bodies, but there was nothing involving the heart and the soul of a person. The heart and soul of a person is pulled by love and not by effort, not by struggle. But the mind comes in the way. Even when we have to have real experience of love, the only obstacle that comes in the way is our own mind. I have seen so many instances where people have experienced love, and then the mind steps in to provide an argument. Are you sure about it? Can you be absolutely certain about it? And those questions which the mind raises sometimes puts the love behind at the back bench. So therefore, love is a natural thing in us. Other things are trained. The mind has to be trained to do things. The body has to be trained to do things. Love does not need any training. It's a natural thing and belongs to our soul and our heart. And when we have experience of love, it pulls us without any effort. It is something that is so ingrained in our consciousness. It's part of our own reality. And therefore, when perfect living masters come to this world to help us out, they know right from the beginning that their method is to pull us with their love. But our minds stand in the way. We want to understand things. We want to grasp the principles. We want to understand all the steps. We want to know all the things that have to be done in order to know what spiritual relief is. We argue and we have big debate. They allow us to do that because they know that the mind is coming in the way of our spiritual growth, and therefore they allow time for the mind to be satisfied. So therefore they will allow argument and debate to go on for the sake of the mind, so that once the mind finds out, this is not my business, this spiritual thing seems to be something beyond me. It is not something that can be captured by reason or logic. It is not something that is based upon argument. That all the arguments that were given were only to satisfy the mind that this is subject beyond the mind. When you come to that point and the mind realizes, this is not my subject, it does not stand in the way, and the soul is pulled by the love of a master, a perfect living master, and that is the spiritual journey. The great master said that all techniques of meditation that are taught by any master are only meant for the mind. People believe so much in mantras, in repetition of holy words. These mantras do not take us even above the first stage of consciousness. They stop there. There's no language above the very first stage of consciousness. Our consciousness is arising from an area where there is no language. Our consciousness is coming from a state where there is no thinking. Consciousness is coming from a state where there is no reason. There is no space. There is no time. Each one of us is using consciousness that belongs to that strange area which is way beyond space and time and mind and thinking. And that is our true home. Our true home does not exist in logic and reason. Our true home lies way beyond that. The perfect living masters who, while they are in their physical bodies, are constantly in touch with the true home. And they have come here merely to take us back to our true home. They have no other intention. They have no other plan. They do not come to reform the world. There are too many reformers already. They do not come to write books. There are thousands of books on the subject already written up. They do not come to set up a religion. There are too many religions already in which we are enmeshed. They do not come to set up a special group. They do not come to do any of these things. All these things belong to the mental realm. All these things belong to the mind. None of them constitute spirituality. Spirituality is beyond all of them. But just for the sake of our own minds, for the sake of satisfying our intellectual curiosity, they make us go through all these things. A gentleman has written an email to me, and he says he has been through all the questions and answers, and he knows this was all to get rid of my intellectual doo-doo. I'd never heard that phrase before, intellectual doo-doo. He says, that's cleared up my intellectual doo-doo, and now I know that we have to move beyond that the spiritual path does not deal with the intellectual understanding of things, that is just to satisfy our minds. The mind is a very, very useful thing. It's one of the most wonderful accessories provided to consciousness, provided to us to use. With mind, we can create time and space. With mind, we create events. With mind, we create past, present, and future. With mind, we create karma. With mind, we create a whole cycle of experiences with cause and effect. With mind, we create the ability to have language. With mind, we create the ability to communicate. With mind, we have the ability to think. Look at the possibilities that this mind provides to us. It's much better than any computer that has ever been created. It's the finest computer embedded right inside us, next to our consciousness. Of course, it cannot run without power, and the only power the mind needs is our own consciousness. We provide the power to the mind and make it conscious. Consciousness is not part of the mind at all. Its consciousness is our own self. We power the mind and make it active, and then we use it. It was a wonderful machine given to us to use. But something happened down the road that instead of using the machine, we began to be used by the machine. I was told in one of the articles they wrote in 2000 in Time magazine that a time will come when computers will become more intelligent than human beings, and we will become slaves of the computers. And I chuckled to myself. I said, we already are. We are already slaves to a computer embedded inside us. The mind is no better than a computer, functions like a computer. And we are already slaves of the mind. The thoughts that arise in the mind, based upon past experiences, unnecessary fears, doubts, which are generated within the mind, they guide us more than our making use of the mind to live our life. Imagine if you knew what the mind was capable of and used it, what a wonderful life you would have. The mind was supposed to be used, not that we were supposed to become slaves of the mind. Somebody asked me only recently, how do we make the switch? We know the mind is constantly thinking. It has to think. Because to give life to the mind, we have to allow it to think. Like give life to the body, we have to allow the heart to beat. If the heart stops beating, circulation stops, the body dies. If the mind stops thinking, the mind dies. Thinking of the mind is just the same thing like the heartbeat of the body. The mind has to think. It thinks constantly. It thinks day and night. It thinks while we are alive. It thinks while the mind is alive. It has to think. That's the function of the mind, to be alive. Therefore, we power the mind to think. Now, thinking is a very great thing too, because by thinking, we can be creative, we can do so many things, we can enjoy a created life in this physical world, we can enjoy astral life, we can enjoy heavens, and sometimes make a trip to hell and get out of it quickly. With the mind, we can do all those things. The mind is designed for that we should be able to enjoy an extended life. Not a life only in our homeland, but a life in a created universe. That is what the whole purpose was. And it's a very useful device. But when it thinks, we forget that what the mind thinks is within our control. We do not use the mind to think the way we want it to think. We allow the mind to think randomly. We allow the mind to pick up its own sources, its own resources for thinking, and picks up little events from the past, picks up little fears and apprehensions of the future, picks up all its ideas that are dangerous to it, and then makes us participant of the danger and fear that the mind is creating by random thinking. This was never the intention of providing us with a mind. The intention was to use the mind in a way that gives us happiness. We can use the mind for happiness even today. The switch has to be done that instead of listening to the mind, we should be able to direct the mind what to think. Instead of allowing the mind to think randomly and to think on its own and then advise us what to do, we should instruct the mind what to think, in what direction to go. We should be in control of the mind. We are the masters of the mind. We are not slaves of the mind. Down the road, because of a single mistake, one big blunder that we made in the course of evolution, up to the point where we are today, we made one big blunder that has caused all this havoc upon us. The blunder was to think that we are the mind. The blunder was to identify ourselves with the mind and forget who we are. And forget that we are consciousness per se, the soul. Consciousness per se, with the mind not being part of it at all, except when we want to use it. We forgot that. And over course of time, we identified ourselves with the mind to the extent that we thought because we can think, we are there. That we are the thoughts, that we are the mind. and we began to live the life that the mind randomly created for us. This was a very big mistake. Perfect living masters, realizing that we have been trapped like this with our own minds, come back to tell us, put the mind in its right place. It's not a bad thing. We made it bad. It was a very useful thing. We made it useless and harmful to ourselves. Therefore, if we can separate ourselves from the mind by observing it, by using it, our whole life will change. Instantly. I guarantee if you today say, I am not going to listen to the mind, I am going to instruct the mind what to do, your life will change from that moment. It's such an important change. Therefore, when you want to instruct the mind what to do, what are the necessary steps? Meditational techniques have been given to us to achieve that object. One of the meditational techniques that helps us is observing the mind at work when you allow it random activity, which means if you close your eyes and sit quietly and do not think of anything but allow the mind to think whatever it likes. Watch what thoughts come to it. You will smile and laugh at what bizarre thoughts come to it. You will be shocked at what the thoughts are when you allow the mind a free handle just to think whatever it wants to. You sit in the head, behind the eyes. Allow the thinking mind to function on its own. Listen to its voice. Watch its images it creates. You'll find it's a very bizarre thing. It's a very, very irresponsible equipment when allowed to go uncontrolled. And then you will find that it is not necessary to live in that state. That you could tell the mind, I want to think of the nice time I had at a party yesterday. I want to think of the lovely time I had when I met my beloved. I want to think of the great time I had when I was in a meditation 3 years ago. I want to just think of those things. And force the mind to think of those things. It will. The mind will follow you if you give instruction to it. Force the mind to think of the good, positive things that you wanted to think, and you will find with practice. It's not a one-time thing. You need practice because of the very long association we have had with the mind. We have treated it as our master, advisor, counselor. We have to change that. But once you practice this as part of your meditation, to separate yourself from the mind, realizing you are not the mind, but you are pure consciousness, pure ability to be aware. You are aware of everything, including your mind. You are aware of your thoughts. And you can direct the mind to think any way you like. Now, there is a little catch in this, and I must explain it to you. That the mind was given to us for many uses, many useful purposes. One of them was to communicate and to instruct. Therefore, when you want to instruct the mind to do something, you have to use the same mind. You have to use the same thinking process in order to make the mind do what you want it to do. You cannot think. The soul does not think. It does not need to think. It has a mind to think. Therefore, even the thought that I want the mind to think like this is a thought in the mind. You have to use the mind to instruct itself. But control should be yours. Where does the control come from? There's a distinction between thinking and will. There's a will. The power of will is still rests with consciousness and with yourself. The power of will belongs to consciousness. It is the will of total consciousness that the whole show is taking place. And we call it the will of God, the will of the Creator. It's the will of total consciousness that creates the whole drama. And within that will, you as individuated consciousness have the same ability to use that will. And that will should not be delegated to the mind. When we delegate the will to the mind and it begins to tell us what to do, we are in trouble. All our troubles in this life are arising for giving over control of the will to the mind. People have asked me about free will. Do we have free will? Or don't we have free will? I can argue both cases. I can prove to you we have free will, and I can prove to you that we don't. You can take any one of those two positions. I take both of them. I take the positions on free will as needed. In what way? There was a friend of mine when I was in college in Cambridge at Harvard University, and he was questioning whether we really have free will or not. He was a philosopher, and he was very interested in the subject of free will. What bothered him the most was that if there is a God or a creator whose will has created everything, and he knows everything because he has created it, how can we possibly have a will independent from that? If we have a will and we can do something he doesn't know, then he's not a creator of the definition we have given him. We have given a definition to the creator that he is all-knowing, omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, that he knows everything, he's present everywhere, and he's all-powerful. If that is the definition of the creator, then his will not only prevails, that he has full knowledge of what we will ever think or use our will. Therefore, if his will is total and predominates, how can anybody say, I have a will separate from it and I'll go against it? And if you cannot go against it, you have to follow that particular universal big will, then you have no free will. It's just a sham, it just looks like it. The argument for saying there is no free will is exactly this, that if there is a total will that prevails, and if you have faith, if you're not an atheist, of course, if you're an atheist and don't believe there's any God, then of course it's your will that's working everything, and you can't see anything beyond that. But I have seen atheists also sometimes believing in God. I remember one atheist said, "Thank God I am an atheist." So you see, an atheist can also express himself sometimes, because there is something in us which seems to feel that there is something superior to our own individuated self. But the question arises, and that is what the question was in that guy's mind. He said, I have found out. He called me early morning one day. He said, I have found out we have no free will. There cannot be, because God has total will and knowledge, and therefore we cannot have free will. Simple. I immediately invited him to my apartment, and I said, come along and we'll test out this new discovery that you have made. You are shouting Eureka, Eureka for that discovery. It has been made by others earlier, but come to my apartment. Before he came, I got a tray from my kitchen and put a cup of coffee in it, and a cup of tea, and an empty cup. I put 3 cups on the tray. By the time he reached, I said, would you like to have coffee or tea or nothing? I've got all 3 things ready. And don't use your will because you don't have any. He was immediately stumped. He said, what do you mean? I said, I have given you 3 choices. The choices are real. They're in front of you. Tell me that you can now make a choice without free will. He said, I couldn't believe that such a big spiritual discovery I made, that we have no free will, can be stumped just by a cup of coffee and tea. I said, the truth is that when I present alternatives to you, choices to you, you cannot help but have free will. Not only do you have free will, you are bound by free will. You are bound by alternatives and choices that come across your life all the time. You have to choose. How do you choose? How can you possibly choose? If you say, I don't want to choose, then you have used your free will. If you choose one thing or over the other, you are using free will. How can you say there is no free will? Free will is obvious. And he said, this is terrible for me. I made a big discovery. Then what about God? I said, no problem. God probably knows what you're going to choose. Forget about him. He must be all-knowing, and he knows, but obviously, at this moment, you have free will. And that is why the dilemma has come to you, what to choose. We all are trapped by free will. Not that we have no free will. We use free will every day. We use free will. And he said, Okay, you convinced me there is no free will. I said, sit down, I'll convince you you have no free will. I'll go the other way around. I said, do you know, I'm not bringing God into the equation at all. I can't see him. We don't know what he's doing and where he is and how he exercises his will. Let's deal with ourselves now. We are in a university, well known for case studies, well known for examining things in a rational way. Let's examine it rationally. That when you make a choice, how do you make a choice? Through free will. Here I gave you an option, choose coffee, tea or nothing. And you made a choice. What choice did you make? He said, I'll take coffee. Now you made a choice, coffee. Did you know why you made a choice, coffee? Were you aware what happened in your head, what happened to your memory, what happened to your subconscious, what happened to all the system in you that chose coffee? Look back on it. When you chose coffee, there was no reason to choose coffee except the predisposition to take coffee over tea created by hereditary reasons or environmental reasons. There's no third reason. Every choice we make in life is based only upon two factors. The factor that you inherited it. It was in your genes. Your father liked coffee, your grandfather liked coffee. It's in your genes, you like coffee. Or you grew up with people who drank coffee, you got accustomed to the taste, therefore you're choosing coffee. There's no third factor at all in your free will. Now, when you chose coffee, at that time, both these factors were completely fixed. You could not change your genes. You could not change where you were born or what your parents and grandparents are. You could not change where you have lived so far. You could neither change your environmental factors, nor could you change your hereditary factors. Therefore, you had no choice but use free will to choose coffee. Where is the free will then? You were bound by something that made you choose only one thing. You could have only chosen one thing. And therefore, truthfully, you had no free will. You were bound by these two factors. And these two factors, what made you think you have free will? What made you think you have free will is the fact you did not know about these two factors at all. You neither know what your genetic makeup is, nor do you know what environment you've been through. You've forgotten everything. The memory is so short. Because of forgetfulness, because of lack of knowledge, you felt you have free will. Therefore, when human beings say we have free will, they have the experience of free will. That means they feel they're making a choice. But the choice they make is predetermined by these two factors. Therefore, it's a question of knowledge. It's a question of awareness. If you could be aware how choices are made inside your head, you would know you had no free will. If you're unaware of it in ignorance, you will feel you're making your free choice. That's free will. So free will arises out of ignorance and not out of knowledge. Looks like free will. Therefore, it's a very interesting thing that if free will is being created only as an experience out of ignorance of how we are using free will, if that is the truth, that appears to be the truth, that free will is all predetermined by these factors by which we make free choices. So if this is totally fixed, that how we will use our free will, and yet we believe we made a very free choice, freely. If this is true, that means in reality, in spiritual reality, everything is predetermined. That means all the choices we will make are recorded somewhere and can always be predicted by somebody who has knowledge. If that is so, what about the law of karma? What about the law of karma which says if you do bad things, you'll be punished. If you do good things, you'll be rewarded. If you can't use free will, it's predetermined, how can you be punished and rewarded? How do you justify the law of karma which is based upon your free will being used one way or the other? The answer to that is even more fascinating. And that is, like your free will is an illusion because of lack of knowledge, karma is also an illusion because of lack of knowledge. If you find who you are, your own consciousness, you will find there is no karma at all. We make up karma the same way we make up free will. We make up cause and effect. We make up the whole mental life in this world as an illusion, and we take it as reality because of lack of knowledge of what the truth about ourselves is. The moment we find out who we are, all this disappears. A person who has discovered that he or she is the consciousness and the soul that is powering the mind, that is powering the sensory systems, that is powering this body, and it's only empowering all these to have these experiences. No, there is no karma. There never has been any karma on the soul. Soul does not suffer any karma, does not enjoy any karma. It is suffered and enjoyed through a created mind. When we take the mind to be a reality and we identify ourselves with the mind, karma becomes real. It's again the same blunder we made, same mistake. When we think we are the mind, we are the thinking machine, karma becomes real. Free will becomes real, punishment and reward become real. When we transcend the mind and discover who we were, we find that was just a put-up show for experience. We have set up this whole system for a certain reason. People say, what is the purpose of life? The purpose of life is to have experience. If we don't have experience, we don't even become the experiencer. Somebody said to me, can the creator exist without creation? I said, no. If the creation disappears, there is no creator. The creator is called creator, has the power to create because of the creation. These are simultaneous things. The experience arises from the experiencer, and the experiencer wouldn't be there without the experience. The whole thing has been set up to create the identity of the experiencer and the experience. The purpose of life is to have an experience. And it can be, of course, lots of types of experiences. Human life, particularly, is a unique experience. It's a unique experience because in human life, we have one experience that is very similar to the experience of the total experiencer. That's why they say, man is made in the image of the Creator. It doesn't mean the Creator also has eyes and ears and nose and face like us. He's faceless, he's powerless, he's just a power, he's a creative power. Then what is similar to the Creator and man and the Creator? What is so similar? The only thing similar is the Creator has the will to create and can create whatever it wills. And we think we have the same kind of will, and we have the illusion of free will. Only common thing. So you will notice that a human life can create karma by thinking this creation to be real. Now to make this creation real, we have to shut off a lot of knowledge of ourselves. Otherwise, we would constantly be aware that we are sitting in an auditorium of this creation and we are watching a show, which is the truth, that we are watching a show. But to make the show a reality, we have to disappear as the creator of the show. We have to disappear as an observer sitting outside of the show. We have to change the location of our own self. And the best way to do it is to put ourselves on the stage in the show, which we have done very well. We put ourselves as a character in the show. And that's beautiful, because taking up one character out of billions, billions or trillions of characters here, by taking up one character, we have been able to make the rest of it reality. And made it so much real that we have forgotten who we are. Taken the costumes that we are wearing to be real. Taking the show taking place outside of us as real. We deliberately did it because we wanted to experience a reality created by illusion. The process of illusion has been used so successfully to create a reality, because we do not know how to define reality. What is real? What we are seeing, is it not real? It's a real experience. When we go to sleep and have a dream, is the dream real or not? Of course, as a dream it is real. But when the dream is going on, the position, the environment, the people, the things of the dream are also real. It does not mean that the things are become unreal because it's a dream. They become real. We go through a real experience of things and people. Only when we wake up, we say they were unreal because it was a dream. If we don't wake up, they are real. They are so real that some of us, me included, have sometimes had a dream in which we found out we are dreaming. And what did we do? When we found out we are dreaming, it's not real, we ran telling everybody in the dream, it's a dream, it's a dream. If we really knew it's a dream, when we woke up, we never told anybody, it's a dream. And we're telling the characters in the dream that we found out it's a dream. That means we were making a truthful statement without realizing the truth. We were in the dream state and we were telling dream characters that it's a dream. That means that we were not fully aware of it, though we were speaking the truth. The same thing happens here. Supposing we find out that what we think is a wakeful state here is also another kind of a dream state, and we can awake from it to another level and find this was a dream. While we are here, we are telling everybody, I'm giving a lecture and I'm talking about this being a dream. If I really knew it's a dream and it's all characters made up, I wouldn't be saying anything, but we take it as real. Even when we have knowledge that it's a dream, we still don't have awareness it's a dream. There's a difference between knowledge and awareness. You can have a knowledge of something existing somewhere and be totally unaware how it exists and where it is. Same thing happens in our experiences of this life. When you wake up from a dream, you know that was a dream. You don't have to open your eyes. Some people say, how can you say this is a created reality? Say, how can you say when you're dreaming, it's a dream? How do you say that? While you're dreaming. You only say it's a dream when you wake up. And if you say it's a dream while you're dreaming, that's part of the dream. And you will find out when you wake up, the body, the mouth from which you said to the people, it's a dream, was not the mouth that was sleeping on the bed. This was not the body that spoke up and said it's a dream. Therefore, you are taking your own different identity as a reality in the dream, and with that reality speaking of the truth, that it's a dream. You didn't really know. You had the correct statement made in the dream, I know it's a dream. But you did not really have awareness it's a dream till you woke up. The same thing is true here. And then people say, that means when we wake up from a dream, we know it's a dream. If we wake up from this so-called wakeful state, we'll find out that all these people that we have been dealing with as real, they were just made up. They were not real, they were just made up as part of a dream. Will we then ever have any interaction with those people? Well, when we have a dream at night and we wake up, we know they were not real, we made them up. But when we sleep next night, we again have interaction with them. Why? Because when we sleep a second time, we forget when we were awake. If you wake up to an astral stage of consciousness, a higher state of wakefulness from this physical state, and you find out that the physical state was all a dream, and you are sure of it, because you woke up. And then you come back into the state, that disappears, unless you have a special means of holding on to that attention, which very few people have, and I'll talk to you sometimes about that, the holding power of different states of consciousness at the same time. We don't have that. Normally, our consciousness operates in a way, at one time, it has only one reality. We shift from that reality to another, that becomes real. We move from that becomes real. If a dream looks real when we are dreaming and becomes unreal when we wake up, what would happen to this life that we are seeing here if we wake up one day and find it was all a dream? Then we'll say, the other state in which we have woken up is a reality. So we've given up two realities of the dream and wakeful state and found another reality. What would happen if we woke up from that again? What would happen if we have multiple awakenings and go on from one state to another? Theoretically, You could wake up in infinite number of times. We don't know which was a dream, which is real, which means we cannot really define reality. Only if you have woken up to several multiple states and found out there is a state when you come across the dreamer with no dream, and there's a possibility to find out there's a dreamer with no dream, then you know that's the ultimate dreamer, the ultimate consciousness. And therefore, by definition, these perfect living masters who have awakened to every possible level that you can awake to have said that pure consciousness, totality of consciousness, in which all dreams are taking place, is the only reality. The experiencer per se, without experience, is the only reality. And all experiences are dreams. Even the experience of your true home, experience of heavens, are all dreams of different levels. What we call a reality compared to a dream is just a relative statement, because one looks more real than the other. The rules of nature, the laws of nature operating to one reality are different from the others. Therefore, we say one is more real than the other. For example, in a dream, I can jump from here to New York in an instant. It will look absolutely natural. In a dream, I'll never question, how did I come so quickly? Never. In a dream, I can go from past to present to one situation to another in different time scales, in different time periods, with no problem at all, and never question, why did I do it? If this happened to me in this wakeful state, I'll say, what miracle is happening? What's going on? Have I gone crazy? The law of time and space is different in a dream and in the wakeful state. It is even more different in an astral state of consciousness. In that state, you can hold up time, which you cannot do here. Here, there is no way we can hold up or freeze any moment. It flows as if time is paramount here. Time predominates over us, that we cannot stop time. And what has gone is past. What is coming is the future. And we are just at the junction of the past and the future, and we cannot hold what's flowing. That time is flowing through us. That's the experience we are having. It's a very silly thing that we should think that because we are experiencing a past and a future, therefore time must be real. But we believe it in this reality. Let me give you a very commonsensical thing. It's common sense that past is what has already happened. You don't live it. You don't live in the past. Past is only a memory. If you want to live in a past, the only way to access the past is through memory. If you have no memory, there's no past. So memory is equal to past. Then, when I'm speaking to you, when is it past, and when is it present, and when is it future? The moment I say any word to you, I say, now, it was past. Present does not have even a nanosecond of time. Think of it, before I said it, it was future. After I said it, it was past. Where's the present? Does present have any time at all? Think of it. The present has no time whatsoever, not even a trillionth of a nanosecond. Because before it happened, the trillionth of a nanosecond, it was future, and when it happened, it was past. And yet we say we are living in the present. People advise us live in the now. People say live in the present, live in the now. Where is the present? Where is the time for it? There is no time for the present. Time doesn't exist in the present. Yet we all believe it does. How did this huge illusion creep over us? How did we get so deluded as to believe that we are living in the present? I'm talking in the present, I'm doing things in the present, we are doing everything in the present. A very simple mistake. We began to call the immediate past as present. What is just happening, we think is present. It's past. Now let us say, if there is no present, then can past exist if there is no present? How can there be a past if there is no present to create anything? The memory is being created in the present, which has no time, and is moving swiftly into the past. But past is the memory. Let's examine future. What is future? I have often said, if 3 words from the dictionary of the languages disappears, hope, fear, anticipation. Hope is a positive way of looking to the future. Fear is a negative way of looking at the future. Anticipation is a neutral way of looking at the future. You disappear these 3 functions from consciousness, there is no future. If you cannot hope, if you cannot fear, if you cannot anticipate, there can never be a future. Can you imagine 3 words are controlling the whole area which we call future? That these 3 functions in consciousness are creating. And do you know all these 3 functions, hoping, fearing, anticipating, require time. Therefore, there is no way they can happen in the present. Present has no time. Where are they happening? In the past. If you really commonsensically look at this, you will find that what we call present is past. What has gone already is past. What we think is future is past. Everything we are experiencing is past. There's no way you can experience the present, no way you can experience the future, it's all past. There is no way to experience the past except through memory. This is something that we have deluded ourselves to the point that just because we're living a life of recall, living a life of looking back into memory and remembering things, and we call it real life here. It's a very interesting thing. Just move your consciousness to one step higher and look at this, and you will find that we are not really living in time and space at all. It's a creation. It's an illusion being created. And therefore, when we want to create a reality, we can create reality out of such illusions like this. We are doing it all the time and taking it for granted. There's a past, there's a future, we have to think of planning in the future. Now we are living in the present, and then there will be a past. It's all memory. Now, the bigger question is, how can you have a memory if nothing happened to create the memory? And it cannot happen here. Nothing could have happened in this level of reality because there is no time, no present here. It must have happened somewhere else. Then you discover, even by a commonsensical introspection of this subject, you discover that whatever we are experiencing has not happened here. It's a replay. It's a replay through memory. And therefore, this whole life that we think is just happening now, and there's a future unknown to us, and it's opening up as we go along, it's all an illusion, very big illusion. We don't have to be a spiritual meditator to discover this. You just have to be a little careful in analyzing what these experiences of past, present, and future are, and what time is. People say in the Egyptian times, they could do time travel. Well, I sometimes laugh at that. We are doing time travel right now. How are they very different from us? What are we doing now? If you ascend to a different level of consciousness and see where this past, present, and future was created, you will find that the nature of time is no different than the nature of space, which means, like, you can put things separately in space. I can say you are sitting this far from me, somebody is sitting further away, and those trees are still further away. I've created a special distance. This is a distance in space. Time is a similar distance. Time is created in distance in a sequence of experience which we call time. Something is earlier, something is later. But this style of making it up is not different than space. That means, like space can be spread out and expanded, so can time. Time has been spread out the same way like space, which means that if I say, is there a New York somewhere far away, so many hundreds of miles away? And I say, yes, I believe it is there, but so far away. I can also say, is 3000 AD somewhere there? Yes, it's there. Our belief that tomorrow will come when tomorrow comes is from that point of view incorrect. Tomorrow exists 24 hours away, just like New York exists so many hundreds of miles away. The past exists so many thousands of miles away, so many hours and minutes away, so many years away. Same thing, which means that when you see the truth of creation, how the creation could be created without time, in 1 nanosecond or less, that the whole of creation could be laid out. You could lay out the whole of time and space up to infinity in 1 instant. Just lay it out and then allow consciousness through the mind, senses, and the body to experience it from point to point, both in space and in time, which means tomorrow, day after is all there. We are moving in time to go there. We are time travelers. We are the same kind of time travelers that the Egyptians were. Why do we praise them? Because they could accelerate themselves. That's the only difference. And we don't accelerate ourselves. We go by a system by which we have acclimatized ourselves. And the system is based upon our watches, clocks, and calendars. Supposing you sit here and feel that you have sat here for 5 hours, and actually the clock says 1 hour, you'll believe the clock and not your experience. We are slaves of clocks and calendars. And that is why we have made this whole time into a different thing than it is. The experience of moving in time is no different than the experience of moving in space. There you can go from one point to another, you go from one point of time to another point of time. This concept of time being already laid out, all events already being laid out, and we are traveling on them from event to event, and therefore we are experiencing them as we go, and that we have the capacity at some level of consciousness to speed up, that we can go faster, slower, or stop, or go backwards or forwards. That this capacity, it should exist somewhere. If this hypothesis is correct, that all events are already laid up and they're already there, then we should be able to move to them faster than the pace at which we are now time traveling and space traveling, so that we can see them ahead of other people's time who are part of our show here. If somebody can do that, then we say he's a time traveler. Actually, all of us are time travelers. Some of you remember my earlier experiences when I was young, and I had gone for an interview for the Navy in India, and a man with a turban, he accosted me after I came out for the interview, and he said, "Do you have a piece of paper?" And I said, "Yes." I had some pad of papers with me, and he began to scribble something on it. Looking at my face, he was scribbling something. And then he folded it, and refolded it, and gave it in my hand. And then he said, "Do you have another piece of paper?" "Sure." "Here's another piece of paper." He said, "Write on it any number between 1 and 10. And my mind immediately said to me, I know this trick. I have tried this trick myself. And this trick is when you tell people to write any number between 1 and 10, the tendency is to write 5. It's the middle of 1 and 10. And this man is thinking that I am going to write 5. I am going to call his bluff off. I wrote 3. He says, "Write the name of a flower." The most common flower in that part of the country is rose. And I said, he believes I will write rose. Quickly, nobody writes any other flower's name. I am going to surprise him and write the name of a flower he may never have heard of. So there's a flower in northern India called chameli, Chameli. So I wrote the name of chameli on that paper. He said, "Write your date of birth." I wrote 1926. He said, "No, you have written the year of birth. Write the date of birth." Normally we write the date ahead of the year, but I wrote the date after the year, November 26. He said, "Now open the paper I gave you." So I opened the paper. To my surprise, it said 3 Chabeli, 1926, and then the date. Exactly the way I had written. Of course, I was totally taken aback. What made me most surprised was that when he wrote those things, I had not even thought of those things. I had not even decided what to do. How could he find out what I will think and what I will decide later on? So I was very stumped by that. So I told him, I said, I am so impressed by what you've just done. Please do me the favor of telling me how you do it, because it's such a impressive thing you have shown me. He said he had been taught by his teacher just to be able to look 5 minutes ahead into anybody's head, what they will think. Not what they've already thought, which is easy to read. You can read what they will think. I said, does it mean that I could have thought no other way? He says, no other way. First time a man outside is telling me everything, including your so-called choices, so-called considering what to write, is predetermined. I was very impressed. He said, shall I tell you a little more? I said, please. He said, before you wrote 3, you said, oh, everybody writes between 1 and 10, writes 5. I am going to call this man's bluff off. He repeated the very thought I had. And about the rose, I am going to write the name of a flower this guy has never heard of. All my thought sequence, which occurred after he had written the paper, he repeated to me. Which struck me, this is the first direct proof I had. Direct proof, first time, that what we think is free will creating a future is also predetermined. That what we think we are making decisions by a free will, how we will use free will to make choices is also predetermined. But we don't know it. Our feeling that we have choice making and free will is arising from ignorance, and not that it is not there. It also proved to me that the whole concept that all events are already laid out and we are time traveling on those events makes sense now. So this whole concept, without even having to go to a higher level of awareness to study it, became clear that these things are already there. So we are, in that sense, time travelers. But the beauty of spiritual evolution or spiritual development is that these things I am speaking about are verifiable by experience. It's very interesting. We like so many interesting things in this life. We run for vacations, we run for excitement, we run for adventure. It's a great adventure to be able to find out that your consciousness has far more capacity to experience new things than you realize. And that consciousness can take you into areas where you will discover how the whole show is set up. That you are the director and the creator of the show and also an actor in it. This business of being an actor in the show is very interesting, because by becoming an actor on the stage while you are creating the show makes it so real. I know that many steps were taken by us to make our experience real at every level. Every level we want experience to be real. Otherwise we don't enjoy it. Nobody enjoys shadows. Nobody will talk to shadows. But when we make shadows into real people, we love to talk to them, love to love them, love to hate them, love to have communication with them, because then they're real. Socrates describes the game of the shadows in one of his great allegories. Some of you might have read it. That he said there are 3 men in a cave, and there is light behind them which is casting their shadows on the wall in the cave. And they think those are demons, monsters. And as they move, the shadows move. See, they are alive, they move. They don't realize it's their body movement that's creating the shadows to move. And they keep on huddling together. Save yourself. These monsters are about to attack. As they huddle, the monsters get together too. They are their shadows. But they won't take them as shadows. They take them as real. A man comes from outside, from the light, and he looks at these people. And he says, what's happened to these people? They are afraid of their own shadows. They're talking to the shadows as if the shadows are monsters. So he tells them, look, they are shadows. Light is behind you. Because the light is behind you, it's casting those shadows. Turn around and see the light, so you know they are shadows. And they huddle even more and they say, this guy is in conspiracy with the monsters. He wants us to turn around so they'll attack us. They won't even listen to that man in the light. Socrates says our situation in this world is like that. We have created experiences outside which we take as real, and we interact with them. We get into fear and hope and disappointments and all those emotional experiences with our own shadows, which look real to us. Why do they look real? Because the light which is casting the shadows is behind our eyes with which we are seeing the shadows. And we don't turn around. If somebody comes and tells us turn around, we think it's a co-conspirator with these shadows. It's a very good example. But where is the light coming from? All the mystics tell us the light comes from behind our eyes, that we see this world. That the truth is that there is light in our head, behind the eyes. A light that does not exist as light as we see outside is more real than that light. It's a light of consciousness that can create the shadows, which then become real. And not only does it do that, it makes us part of the shadow. It's such a wonderful light that the light of consciousness inside our head can reflect something outside. And we are constantly looking at the shadows outside and never seeing where the light is. We go to see a simple movie, and in the movie we find that we are looking at the screen. And those shadows, those are all shadows on the screen. And we say, now what will happen? What will happen is already there in the film. It's already there. It's not that it's going to happen. But we sit there on the edge and we cry and we laugh at those shadows. And for the moment we take them as real. While we are enjoying the movie, we take it as real. Even if it's a horror movie, nobody gets up from the chair to run and stop it. And we know it's a movie, but still we take it as real. This particular phenomenon of knowing that it's a movie and still not interfering in it and taking it as real is what the disciple of Socrates' disciple Plato, that means Aristotle, in Greece, he described. He says, we love drama so much. Our consciousness created at the physical level loves drama so much. And we want to make the drama so real that we call it a suspension of disbelief. That we deliberately suspend our disbelief and start believing it. Willingly. Knowing it's a show, we still want it to be real. And therefore we undergo a process. He went a step further, Aristotle, much to the agony of his teacher, Plato. He said, because of this, we should have dramas on the stage outside. People don't see this world as a drama. We should create a drama on the stage. And when we create a drama on the stage, people will be able to see it and think it's real. At that time, there were no movies, by the way. The movies came much later. So that was stage shows they had. But on the stage, they would enact tragedies. And people sitting in the audience would cry and feel so bad. They would put on the stage human situations. And people thought they are real human beings who are going through those emotional problems. And they would cry and get their own emotions. And somebody asked Aristotle, why are you making people cry? Why don't you just show comedy and show some nice laughy things to them, and they should be enjoying it? You putting up tragedies there. He said, tragedy is the best drama. Comedy is not. Because when you see comedy, you are seeing people worse than they really are in real life. And you can know there's a slapdash just for the fun. It doesn't affect you. When you see history, the second kind of play, history, just a historical replay, doesn't affect you. But when you show tragedy, that's when you are emotionally affected. Therefore, tragedy is the highest drama. And he said, what happens in tragedy? Because of the willingness of the consciousness to dismiss the fact it's a tragedy only in a show and to take it as real, you identify with it. And what happens when you identify? Your own emotions come up. And you can get rid of your emotions by watching a drama, which he calls the catharsis of excess emotions. He says we go to a drama for our own sake because it helps us to solve our emotional problem. And Plato said we are doing it anyway in life. What are we doing otherwise? In life, we are doing the same thing, catharsis of emotions. What are our relationships for here? Why do we have all these relationships in life? For our emotional catharsis. Catharsis means purgation, like a purgative. We are getting rid of those excess emotions and stabilizing our life. Because situated as we are, as slaves of the mind, and the mind being slaves of the senses, and the senses being slave of the physical senses, and the physical senses depending entirely on desire and attachment. Look at this pattern. The pattern is very beautiful. That the consciousness gets into a trap with the mind and begins to take space, time, and creation as real. The mind sets up a series of different ways of absorbing experience through different senses. Touching, tasting, smelling all become different. And the sensory system then attaches those senses to the physical body and says the body is experiencing them, not that we are experiencing it. And then the physical body comes in contact with the physical shadows who are taken to be real, and we are all emotionally charged. What a great way to set up a drama. And then there's the emotions would make us all crazy. The emotional upheavals that the world creates for us, the characters of the world create for us, would make us all crazy. In order to be a little stable, we go and see movies and we read books and we go and see drama. So Aristotle was right to that extent. But Plato says, don't lead them away from reality. You are making them run to dramas when they should see that the world itself is a drama. I want them to see that this is the show being put up from another reality. The reality is the world of ideas. Ideas are not coming from this world. How do people have an idea of something? He says the ideas come from a more real world than this world you're looking at. He describes the astral world, which we call the astral world today. He called it the world of ideas. He says, I must convince you people that the world of ideas is more real than the world outside that you see. Because nothing could be created here if you had no idea of that thing. And he gives an example. He says, look at an ordinary example of a chair. What's a chair? Something to sit on, right? Chair is just about something to sit on. Now, an idea of a chair has created thousands of different kinds of chairs. The idea of a chair is one. Chairs are thousands of different shapes and sizes and different forms. If the idea of the chair was not there, none of those chairs could have existed. He gives an example that the world of ideas, which is the astral world, the world where the sensory perceptions can exist by themselves without physical bodies, that is the state from which all ideas come and they create this whole world around. Therefore, if somebody wants to move towards reality, he instructed Plato, please tell people, if you want to move towards reality, move towards the world of ideas. Don't move to Aristotle's drama. He's taking you away. Aristotle said, I am doing it for a useful purpose. So people should have a more stable life, have control over their emotions, and get rid of excess of emotions. That's the purpose of drama that I am creating. And I create tragedies as the best form of drama. But they said that, tragedy can also cause misery. You show tragic scenes and people feel so bad, that life is so bad. He says, no, I have a little catch in that. I make the tragedy a little twist in the tragedy, and that is, I create a hero. Every tragedy has a hero. Hero is a great guy, and the person who watches tragedy thinks he's the hero too. So he puts a hero in a tragedy, and then the hero must die at the end, because otherwise it's not a tragedy. So the hero is given a tragic flaw, a flaw by which he must die. He is a hero, we all like his heroicness, we like his bravery, at the end he dies. That's tragedy. We can all then equate ourselves in some form with some of the action of the hero. When he falls, we say, yes, if he fell, we could fall. When he rises, yes, we are great heroes. It serves as a very big emotional support for us. So in these philosophers, they have been discussing what this creation is all about. They've been discussing why we have these characters. And I have sometimes mentioned to you the story of Chaucer, Geoffrey Chaucer, the author of the Canterbury Tales. In that book, I'll repeat it for some of you who haven't heard it. In the book Canterbury Tales, Chaucer writes about the journey of about 40 or 50 pilgrims going to Canterbury for pilgrimage. And in those days, there was no transport like cars and so on. It's the 17th, 18th century England. So they had to go on foot or on carriages or horses and so on. So the whole group is traveling together like a party to Canterbury. And on the way, they take several days to reach there. So just to while away the time, they are telling stories to each other, singing songs, reciting poems. So just to while away the time. And in that, they tell beautiful stories. I have gone through the whole book of that Canterbury Tales, and every story is worth studying. The reason why these stories are great, and they have been acknowledged in English literature as the greatest stories of all times. Why? Because at the first time in written English language, a story created a character. And a king wasn't always a king. A king could be a jealous king could be a miserly king could be a different kind of character. This was first introduced by Chaucer in that book. After that, all stories have characters. All movies today you see have character. That's why we go and see them. But Chaucer was the first one to create. And he puts that character in very simple form, but it is so accurate that you are touched by it. For example, he describes an attorney, a lawyer of those days. And he says in that poem, in that Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, he says, "A busier man than him there nos." Nos means never was. "A busier man than him there never was, and yet he seemed busier than he was." Equally true of today's attorney also. You go to his office. Similarly describes a woman who married many times, a lady from Bath. Bath is a town in England. Then there was a woman from Bath. Husbands at kirk, that means husbands at church. She had 5. Without other company in youth, but I need not talk of that youth. That means she had 5 husbands, but beside the other company in young age, I am not going to talk about that. This kind of characterization of a person was never done before. Now the book is very interesting for that reason, but the more interesting part is that Chaucer himself becomes a character in the story. He says, I was also walking along with those pilgrims. Now here Chaucer, the author of the whole book, is also walking with the other pilgrims. And at a certain time in the journey, the other pilgrims say, Chaucer, you are a great author, poet, writer. Come on, tell us something good. Give us a good poem. And he says, I don't know any poetry. The man who has written the whole book, when he becomes a character in the book, he says, I don't know anything. They say, come on, don't try to make a fool of us. We know you are an author. We know you are a poet. Come on, give us one of your good poems. And Chaucer comes out with the worst doggerel rhyme in the whole book. And not that the other didn't realize, they all immediately criticize him. Oh, we didn't think you would come up with this kind of stuff. This question has been put in literature and in religion. They compared this case with Christ, Jesus Christ. If Jesus Christ was Son of God, one with his Father, he came down here. Why was he crucified by his own creation? Here is Chaucer, the author of the whole book, author of all the characters. Why was he crucified, attacked, criticized by his own creation? The characters who criticized him, he created them. And the answer is the same in both cases. The answer is that when Chaucer created Chaucer the character, he was aware that he was the author of all the characters. It didn't matter at all which character he took. He got criticized as a character, knowing he is the author of all. Jesus Christ came to this world, was crucified, knowing all the time his crucifixion is for the play, and that he was still the creator. Therefore, to put somebody in a play, you can take any role, it doesn't matter so long as you have awareness. What is the implication of this? The implication is that if we have means through a spiritual discipline, through a meditational experience, if we have the means to realize who we really are, if we can realize what total consciousness in us is like, we will never mind what role we are playing here today. If you don't have that knowledge, you'll cry all the time, oh, I'm sorry, I'm poor, I can't pay my bills, I can't do this. Oh, that person deceived me and this person ditched me. Then we will be crying like a character. But if we know that the character has been placed for the experience and you are all the characters, the experience would be totally different. Now, all religion says that ultimately we are all one. Very easy to say it, but has anybody experienced it? When they say we are all one, it's a mental exercise in trying to feel we are all one. But inwardly, we are not. I want to be one with everybody. I don't like that person. Now, what kind of oneness is that? But if you have awareness, if you have true awareness, that is the whole thing is an extension of your own consciousness. You can't think like that, no matter what role you are playing, because you're playing all the roles. And this only happens by a discovery of your own self. That is why Socrates gave good advice: know yourself. You have to discover who you are, you'll get all problems solved. There'll be no such thing left as a problem or a question if you just know who you are. And how do you know who you are? Go into the light, not find through the shadows. Nobody has ever found the reality by looking at shadows. They always have to turn around to see what light is casting the shadow. What consciousness is creating all our experiences outside. And that can be found by a very simple device, that we are looking at this world through physical eyes. We open our eyes and the world comes into being outside and we say, this is the real world, we just woken up into this. The body that is ourself is moving around. It is just that we are beginning to feel, because of the experience, that the body is us. Is this physical body really us? That's the first question. Well, the answer can be found out by closing your eyes, going within, behind the eyes, seeing if there is light there, light of consciousness that's creating the experience of having a body. If you can find that out, you will find that the body was an experience. It was not that it was really there. It was experiential that you had a body, and because of a body, all other bodies came into being. Supposing we don't have the physical body, there's no other body that exists. Everything disappears. If you don't have this physical body, the physical world disappears. The physical world is manifest because we take our physical self, the physical body, to be our own real self. Now, when you withdraw your attention from the physical body, just withdraw your attention, because you will notice that our experiences of everything is arising from extension of our attention. Wherever we put attention becomes real. We put our attention on the whole body. And from the sensory systems, we put our attention on the whole world. Everything is real. If you withdraw the attention as an act of meditation, as a meditational technique, if you withdraw your attention from everything by putting it back where attention seems to be flowing from, when you are conscious being as a human being in a body, and you try to figure out, where am I putting my attention to things from? It doesn't take very long to find out. It's not from your hands and feet and legs and body, it's from the eyes and the area behind the eyes. Therefore, when you close your eyes, you are still feeling you are there, because your thinking, your consciousness, your sensory systems are all working from behind the eyes and the head. If you could close your eyes and withdraw your attention totally to that point, that you forget if there's anything outside, what would happen? you will find you're still there. You're not only still there, you have some capacity of seeing and doing things which you never thought you had. You will find that you have the capacity to see things, and that capacity to see things was making you see things with the physical eyes. You thought because you have physical eyes, therefore you can see. That was not true at all, but we don't realize it. If these physical eyes were responsible for our seeing, we could never see dreams. You could never see anything in imagination. The act of seeing is not the act of opening these eyes. So the act of seeing is something, a power that is lying inside us. But we are using these eyes to use it, and therefore we think we are seeing with these eyes. If we don't use these eyes and can still see, then we realize the power of seeing was different than the power of seeing through these physical eyes. And that can happen very easily. We all have the capacity to do it. By withdrawal of attention behind the eyes and seeing, we can still see. See more. See a lot more clearly than we ever saw with physical eyes. We can do all the sensory things much better by withdrawing attention and finding out we have another self existing other than this body. Big discovery, step one, that we find out it was an error and a mistake to think that our real self was the physical body. Therefore, it was a mistake to think that the physical world was the only place to have an experience with. So once we get to know that we exist in a form other than the physical body, a form that can fly, a form that can move indifferently, a form that can change the nature of time, a form that can freeze time, if we find out that we have capacity to have experience of another world in a very different way, it gives an instant proof to us that we were mistaken thinking this physical body and the physical world is only reality and we are this physical body. Actual experience. No amount of reading of books, no amount of discussion and debate can ever give you this conviction which an actual experience can give. Actual experience is like waking up. When you wake up from a dream, do you have some uncertainty if you are awake? Do you consult anybody? Am I awake or not? Do you pinch your body to see if you are awake? Do you know when you wake up in the morning, you don't even move, don't even open your eyes and you know you are awake? The level of consciousness changes. You recall that you went to sleep in that bed, and that recollection convinces you beyond any doubt that you were sleeping and you were dreaming, and now you are awake. Nothing happens to change or to verify anything. If 10,000 people came to you in the morning and said you are still sleeping, you will not believe them. You are awake. The experience of awakefulness is a direct experience and proof of what your state of consciousness is. When you withdraw your attention and find that you have another entity more real, more awakened than this, it carries its own conviction the same way. You don't need anybody's proof for that. You have that own experience. But that's only step one. You can rise, again, same principle. Withdraw your attention. Within the area from where attention seems to be flowing from that body, you go to the next one. You can progressively go right within your own consciousness to the point where you discover you are the only single total consciousness. The whole show took place there. Beautiful. Now, once you have that experience, how can you have any questions after that? Where do you have questions? You can go back to any number of dreams, any number of sleeps, if you can hold on to that experience. And holding on to that experience becomes a reality when you go to totality of consciousness, because that's from where the holding principle itself starts. The principle that you have to close up one kind of reality to open up another, this principle starts there, you can change it. And you can hold all the levels of consciousness at the same time and enjoy drama at every level you want. Perfect living masters are good examples of doing this. They are at all times, at all levels of consciousness. It's a delight to meet them. Go and talk to them. They can talk at any level, at any time. They can be with you at your level, no matter where you are, at what level you are. Whether they're sitting in a physical body with us, sitting in an astral body and talking to us there, or they're sitting in a spiritual form, or where you find you were one with them and they were merely creations of your one single consciousness. The physical representations here in the physical body, having all that awareness at the same time. This is what spirituality, the spiritual path promises. The spiritual path doesn't promise you to become a good person. There are a lot of ways to become good people and then get rewarded next life. There are a lot of ways to get bad. Try to be good and be bad. Then you come in another life, mixed life, with good and bad. These things are happening here all the time. We have been in this cycle for so long. But the spiritual truth is to go and know who you really are. Our reality is totality of consciousness, pure consciousness. The rest is just set up. It was set up for different levels of experience which you are having. Then you will enjoy every experience, because that is what the intention was. When you go into a vacation land to go for adventure, you don't go for suffering. Even though you may go uphill sometimes, you may go sliding, you may do all kinds of dangerous things, you go on for vacation. We came here for vacation. What ruined our vacation was we forgot it's a vacation. We forgot where we came from. We forgot we have to go back. And we thought, this is our home, this is our life, this character that is here is ourself. So this all changes with spiritual lifting up. And that is what the perfect living masters come and tell us. I think whoever has had a chance to meet a perfect living master is very lucky. I think very fortunate. Because at least an indication has been given what is possible. Then, of course, the rest depends on us, because we believe in free will. We are living in the area of ignorance and free will. We make choices. So we make choices, and then we discover the choices were made somewhere else. Doesn't matter what the reality is. The experience is what we came to create. We created the experience of free will by blocking up the knowledge of the truth and of our own self. Enjoy it. Enjoy free will also. How do you enjoy free will? Use the resources given to you in your body, in your mind, in your senses to your advantage. Don't be driven by them. Let them not tell you what to do. You tell them what to do. So if you use your own resources of your own physical body, of your physical sensory perceptions, of the internal astral sensory perceptions, of your physical mind, thinking in the body, of the astral mind, being able to see the world of ideas, of the real causal mind, which is the real mind, creating more time and space and all these events. If you can see all this, the whole show changes. And this is what the purpose of life really is. The purpose of human life is to be able to use the experience of free will to seek and get all this stuff. We don't use it. We are no different than the animals. We are no different than trees. We live their kind of life, just drifting along. Every day is just a drift. Just eat, drink, be merry, work, and then die at the end. This is no different. The animals, where have we used our power of seeking, power of free will to transcend all this? The purpose of human life was to do that. And don't forget, once you get the knowledge of what life itself is, how different forms of life are created, and how evolution takes place in the forms of life, and that we all are made of the same substance that every living thing is made of, that our consciousness is the same stuff, the soul is the same stuff that lies in a tree, or an insect, or a bird, or an animal, or an angel, with the same consciousness lying in all these forms of life. When we discover that, then we find that this is just a cycle to rotate around in different forms of life. And human life is unique, because human life alone gives us the opportunity to use free will. Trees standing outside has no free will. Dogs and cats are running on instincts, totally instinctive reactions to everything. They don't think, do I do this or do I do that? Only human beings do that. And the very beauty of using free will, a choice, for our advantage of discovering ourselves, we are using it to create dilemmas for ourselves, to create conflicts for ourselves. That was not the purpose of free will. The purpose of free will was to discover who we are. I hope that we, being so fortunate that having received this message from perfect living masters and having an opportunity to practice meditation in the way in which we can withdraw attention and discover these things personally, not depend on anybody else, have no blind faith whatsoever. The perfect living masters say, do not have any blind faith. Only believe what you experience. Of course, it doesn't mean I want to believe first and then I will experience. Then you never experience. You have to have that elementary one step. Okay, I am willing to take one step and see what happens. I'll more take the second step unless the first one is the correct one. Go step by step. But believe what you experience. Don't sit at the edge now and say, I want to believe everything about creation. I want to believe everything about this. Why? Somebody said this. Why? I read in a book. Not good enough. Your life will not change. Your life will have the same ups and downs, the same miseries, the same happiness as before. It will only change when you practically experience these things which lie within yourself. This is not somebody unique who has to have this. This is not made, the spiritual path is not made for any special group. It is not made for any special race or nationality or gender or age. It is a natural possibility put into every one of us. A child of 5 years old and an old man of 100 years old cannot practice this. Why lose this opportunity? I come here just to alert you that there is a chance, a great chance around you. Take advantage of it. Okay? Thank you very much.